Right. Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Pete Lonton, and Eamonn Walsh joining us. Good morning, Eamonn.
Good morning, Pete. Thank you very much for having me on.
No, thanking you. So, Eamonn, introduce yourself to us for us today, will you?
So yeah, my name is Eamonn Walsh. I'm from a small little town in the west of Ireland called Foxford in County Mayo, and I'm the creator of Power of the Individual, which is a coaching program on mindset. It's coaching on mindset, but really, Pete, what it is, it teaches you how to reverse engineer conditioning and replace it with conditioning and mindset that you want yourself, so that you can build the mindset you want, and in doing that, create the reality in the real world that you want.
Well, that sounds quite deep. I'm looking forward to hearing about more of that later. So tell me this, what does Fire in the Belly mean to you then, Eamonn?
Fire in the belly to me is pure passion. It's fire in the belly to me is when you have truly made a decision on something, and nothing then stands in your way. There are no excuses. There's nothing that can stop you, no matter what the price is. That is being up at silly o'clock in the morning to get the job done, or traveling the length and breadth of the country or the world, or whatever you got to do to get it done. You will pay that pricing and get it done. That's what fire in the belly is for me.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, in terms of actually making a decision as a conscious choice, would you say Fire in the Belly for you is it's a conscious thing or a subconscious?
I think that very much depends on where an individual is at, Pete, to be honest. It can be either. Um, with practice, it can be a conscious decision all the time, most certainly. And that actually will be a big part of the work that I do as well, is identifying these types of things. What is the goal? What is the price? Are you willing to pay it? And making that decision, rather than getting on that Ferris wheel that so many people find themselves on, where they're kind of rinse and repeat and not getting the results they're looking for. But it can be either. I think it depends on where a person is at with themselves.
Sure. Oh, that's quite interesting. Yeah, again, we'll look forward to that. So tell me, who are you? Where do you come from? What's your background?
Well, look, I come from, as I said, Foxford in the west of Ireland, small little town.
You're born and bred there, I take it, are you?
Born and bred, yeah. I'm a native Mayo man, and I mean, yeah. Look, at when I was younger and in school and all that kind of stuff, I suppose I was like anybody else, up to mischief all the time and playing basketball and doing, video games. But one thing I think that differentiated myself and my friends, the people that I hung around with, from a lot of other people, was we really and truly at that point in our lives knew no limits to. There was no limit to, and again, bringing it back to that decision-based thing. If we decided we were going to do something, we would do it, to the point that we built a jet engine in our shed, I think when we were like 16 or 17, and nearly blew the shed up as well, mind, in the process. But
it does sound slightly dangerous, but yeah.
Yeah, no, but this kind of stuff, so we knew no limits. And I had gone through my life doing that. I remember the first time I can remember where I actually consciously made a decision like this was, I play music, Pete. I had a brief career with music and everything else, and have played a lot of music in various parts of the world and all this kind of stuff. But I remember I always did it when, from a very young age. I never remember not playing music, but my sister used to compete long before I competed in the Flaciole. Okay. And I remember the first year she got to the All Irelands, and I used to tag along to these events, right? To these competitions and that. And I'd have my Game Boy out, and I'd be sitting down playing my Game Boy. I remember one time I fell off a chair in the middle of it. I was leaning back on a chair playing the Game Boy, and I was so engrossed in the middle of someone playing in the competition, I fell off the chair.
Just for people out there, explain what the Flaciole is.
The Flaciole is a competition for Irish musicians, for traditional Irish musicians, where you compete at county level, provincial level, and national level for titles, basically for best in the county, province, and the country. And I remember the first time my sister got to the All Ireland Fla and competed for an All Ireland title, and that was in Clonmel, I believe, in Tipperary. And I remember coming back in the car and saying to my parents, next year I'm going to be the one bringing us to the All Irelands, because I just loved what I saw when I was there. It was high energy. It was really buzzing, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I made a decision in the car, and the year from when we got home, it was a year around again until the flag came again, kind of thing. And I remember, I cannot remember passing the piano once without playing it, you know. But the decision was made in the car on the way back, if you know what I mean. And that's the first time I can remember consciously making a decision that this is going to happen. Not I'm going to try, not sure we'll give it a go and I'll put in some effort and whatever. I was doing it, and I did. The following year, I got to the All Irelands and competed at All Ireland level, and won a couple of medals in the years after that. But
So what age were you then, Eamon?
oh, 12 or 13, I would say, maybe.
Why did you make the decision?
I just I wanted to be a part of what I saw at the All Irelands the first time we went, and it was really, really high energy, and I was quite envious actually of the people that were competing, and I looked at it and said, you know what, I can do this. This is me. This is something I want to do. I want to be up on that stage playing the piano to all these people and competing, and I just did it. I just went and did it. Back then maybe I didn't realize the full extent of what I was doing in terms of the decision that I'd made, but somewhere within it, I knew that there was all this was is a process. All this goal is a process, a price that has to be paid, a number of hours on the keys, and if I do that, I'll get there,
And the
and
reward, what was the reward for you there, and not mentally at that time, do you know?
the reward mentally, is it?
Mm.
I suppose it would have been a sense of fulfillment and achievement,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is something I suppose I didn't realize I knew I wanted
Mm-hmm.
up until that. But it was, I think, the sense of achievement that I saw other people getting at that stage, at that level, and that is something that I wanted at the time, and that's what drove me on to do it. But as I said, that's the first time I can remember consciously making a decision that this is going to happen, not we'll give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
This is happening. And I actually practiced it all the way through secondary school. I remember sitting down with my principal during the Leaving Cert, and everybody thought I would get like 300 and something points, and I had it all calculated up. I knew exactly what I was going to get, depending on how hard the markers were going to be. I was going to be between, I think it was like something like 450 and 470 points is where I said that's exactly where I'm going to fall, and I think I landed exactly in the middle at 460. And I remember being in the principal's office when I was getting my results, and he said, I mean, you've done really well. And I said, okay, and he said, no, I mean, you've done really well. You've done 460 points. And I stopped and I went, yeah, that's about right. But to me, because again, it was just that, it was just a process, it was just a decision I knew what I wanted to do when I left secondary school, and what I wanted to do in college and that. And well, actually, subsequently, turned out I didn't know what I wanted to do when I went to college, but I thought I did at the time. And what I thought I wanted to do required a certain amount of points, and there was a certain amount of work that I had to do to get those points. And I did that amount of work, no more, no less. That it was as simple as that for me at the time. And I suppose I grew up very much knowing this and understanding this myself, that if I do X, I will get Y. The bit I hadn't realized is sometimes you misjudge the price. Sometimes you get the price wrong, and I had never experienced that up until the demise of my first business venture. When I was in third year in college, we were sent out in placements, and I couldn't really find any placements that I thought were going to benefit me in any real way, So I was studying music and multimedia, and I decided I wanted to set up my own events and entertainment company, right? So I went to the course director and signed off it and everything else, and we produced some great shows and decided to keep the company going after that, and we ran some great concerts, some quite big concerts, and we were looking at gearing up into moving into festival space and all this kind of stuff, and it was going really well. But there was on the outside it was going really well, but there was an awful lot of stuff happening behind the scenes with myself that no one else saw, that wasn't really stacking up, and there was some not so good habits coming out, and coping mechanisms that I was starting to develop under the pressure of everything. And I remember more than once working 24 hours straight, you know. I remember after one particular concert, it was 24 and a half hours, that particular one, and I was sick for about 3 days after it. There was other things coming into it. Drinking was starting to come into it as a coping mechanism and everything else, and things went very downhill. But where that all came from was I misjudged the price of what I was trying to achieve, you know, and I couldn't understand why I wasn't achieving what I had set out to achieve, because as far as I was concerned, I had paid the price, and I never considered that maybe I got the price wrong, you know. And that led to a very, very destructive time in my life, where I lost the business and lost pretty much everything I had at that time, you know. Everything that was important to me, it was you know, by the end of it was gone. So I was left in a situation where in terms of perception, anyone that's done work with me will know I talk a lot about perception, and particularly language, perception through language and all this kind of stuff. But my perception of my reality at that time was ruins, you know, that it was like a ruined building, if you can imagine a complete, you know, a building that was after being bombed or something like that. You know, that was the perception I had. So I came home and I knew I was in trouble, you know. So I came home and I said, look, I need a bit of help and support here. I don't know where I'm at with all this. And I remember going into my doctor to have a chat with my doctor about it. And I was prescribed medication, right? So antidepressants and that. And I remember coming home, getting the antidepressants and coming home, and it wasn't the solution I was looking for, you know. And I looked at the box of tablets. I remember, actually, I'm pretty much sitting now exactly where I was when this was happening, funny enough. And I remember holding the box of tablets in front of me, right in front of me, and looking at them and kind of going, my mind is stronger than this box of tablets. I don't need these tablets to come out of this. That's not the solution for me. So I threw them in the bin, and I never took a single one. And if I was to put a pin in the timeline on where power of the individual began, that was it, with that decision. And again, we're coming back to a decision here. So I went from a state of being very disempowered, going, God, my decision to succeed at all this stuff didn't work, to now I was back in the driver's seat a little bit and deciding that my mind was strong enough to come out of this without any medication or anything like that. So that was very much the starting point of power in the individual. And in that moment, my perception of my reality changed from one of a field of rubble, if you like, to a blank canvas, you know, where I could draw whatever I wanted on that canvas and create whatever kind of a reality I wanted to create on that canvas. And that was very much the beginning of it. And the rest is kind of history, as they say. There was, you know, a lot of learning after that, and a lot of refining, and, you know, building it up and everything else. But that's where it all began.
Wow, cool. And so, I mean, talk to me. I mean, as a child, I mean, what sort of a child were you? You know, from you know, the really young age. I mean, were you always entrepreneurial, or?
I was always a bit mischievous. I think I was always very I wasn't mischievous. I was always very curious, very, very curious, and that got that got me into a lot of trouble.
In what way?
Well, what will happen if I do this? You know, even like little things. You know, I would get a toy, and I'd take it apart. You know, I would absolutely take it apart. If it was a mechanical toy of any description, I would take it apart to try and put it back together to see what the insides were like, and to see what I could learn about it. You know, but that was okay when it was my toys and my stuff that I was doing it to. But when I started doing it with things in the kitchen, you know, Mom wasn't too impressed. You know, when things in the kitchen started breaking and coming up, I remember I had a massive imagination as well, and I had this ability to transform a room into whatever I wanted to transform it into in my mind. And I remember one particular episode, I was Tarzan, and the curtains were the vines that Tarzan would swing on. But yeah, they weren't as strong as the vines that Tarzan swung on. So I ran away. I ran away for a few hours after that because I didn't want to deal with it. But yeah, so that's the kind of mischief and trouble that I'd be getting into when I was young. Curious is the word I would use. You
Mm.
know,
Have you brothers and sisters, or
I've
what's
one sister. Yeah, one sister. Yeah, a year
older,
older than me.
younger?
A year
Right,
year
okay.
older than me. Yeah.
So you're the baby.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So got away with a lot as well, being the baby.
Yeah, listen, that's what it's all about. So through school then, I mean, what was your, what was your strengths in school?
Anything that was practical, anything I could put my hands on, you
Mm,
know, engineering, construction, technology, anything like that that had a practical element to it, where I could do something and see a result. So even like science and that kind of stuff, even the likes of geography, where you could actually see it, and you could feel it, and it was something that was real.
mm,
um, I still have a fascination with geography, actually, particularly physical geography and the formation of land and valleys and mountains and all that kind of stuff. Um, so anything I could put my hands on, and anything that would allow me to create something, was something that I was definitely interested in. I would, you know, even the likes of English and that, where you'll be creating stories. We had a fantastic English teacher in our school, um, and that was, but things I struggled with. I would have struggled with the likes of Irish, and I didn't do any other languages,
mm,
but certainly that was never a strong suit for me. But anything that, and I would nearly go to the point that if there was even a glimmer of an opportunity to create something within the subject, I'd find it, and I'd create that thing. But
mm.
that was history used to bore me a little bit, even though I do like history, but it was very much, you know, and I'd get bored and again get curious about other things and maybe start causing a bit of trouble. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed school because I had great opportunities. I had fantastic opportunities in the school that I was in.
Mm.
I think it was absolutely fantastic opportunities to do what I wanted to do, which was build things and create things and take one thing and turn it into something completely different.
I'm very interested in the language you use. I mean, you come across as very
Yes,
visual with an element of kinesthetic in there as well. So it's like if you want to teach me, show me.
that would be, yeah,
'Cause,
that would be correct. That would be correct.
mm,
I would be, if I was tested, which I have been several times for that. I would be
mm,
predominantly visual with a strong kinesthetic coming
mm,
behind that. Yeah, yeah,
mm. It makes sense, the way you're, and the same, I mean, with languages and all the rest, and not being there because it's very hard to see a language, it's the word side. Oh, very interesting. So, I mean, in terms then, I mean, through school, were you a good student, you know?
like define a good student. I was,
Mm,
you know, I was about 80% of the time. You know, I thoroughly enjoyed school, and we had a fantastic school. We had a fantastic principal, and we had some fantastic teachers. And I suppose they understood what it was to be a young man or a young woman, and the things that the mischief that you might be getting up to. But we had phenomenal times. I would have been involved in the Green Schools initiatives in our school, and we had those opportunities, public speaking. We would have competed. I would have competed 4 years with my friends in the BT Young Scientist, um, and all of So we had phenomenal opportunities outside of the classroom. And to be honest, Pete, I think if I didn't have those, I probably could have been quite a troublesome individual in school, because I would get bored, and that's not a good thing for a young person to be, but we had just phenomenal opportunities. So um, I'd love you to ask some of my teachers that question. I'd actually love to hear
Well, I was going to
what
say,
their memories of it.
what did your school report say? What was your standard response?
I never remember it being negative, to be honest. I never remember it being negative. I got on very well with all my teachers, and if we ever had a problem, we always sat down and talked about it,
Mm,
and resolved it. Saying that, we had a points system in school for when you got into trouble. You get 5 points, 10 points, and I think 20 points was a lunchtime detention, and 40 was an after school detention, and 60 was
lose a leg or something.
Well, I think you got I think you got a suspension at 60, or you got put on a report or something like that. I can't remember, but you
Mm,
had this point system, and I remember, I can't remember how many times it was wiped. Was it every term or what it was? Or I think it was every term it was wiped. But I'd go into every term and I'd go as far as getting the 40 points and get the after school detention, and then I'd kind of cop on and stop. But so there's that side of it. But I genuinely got on very, very, very well with all my teachers, and we had a great time
mm.
in secondary school. You know.
And what had you any idea or any sort of ideas of what you wanted to be when you sort of grew up as such?
At the time, I very much wanted to be involved in music, involved in entertainment, and video a little bit as well. So, I would have studied a lot of that when I was in college down in Limerick, music and multimedia and video and all that kind of stuff. And I suppose I was, again, on the outside, I was living the dream perceptually, in the sense that I had the company, I had the business, I had the world that I wanted to live in, and on the outside, you would say I was living in that world. But again, as I say, um, the it was the price that I had misjudged with regard to that. And
Mm,
so I did. When I played in bands all the way through secondary school and after secondary school and the early years of college and that, and we would have, we would have played all over the country, and we would have played. I know we played in Italy, and we played in Estonia, and we got around playing and that kind of stuff, And I remember we were playing in Estonia. I was about 10 or 12 of us on a stage from Ireland, and these Irish ones, and it was a big festival that we were at, and it was the closing night, and there was a big thunderstorm, and the whole thing nearly got called off. A couple of us stayed down just to see what would happen, and the next thing, everything, all power, like the power had gone and all this, and all power came back, and the storm seemed to go away. So they decided to go for it, and they put us on the stage, and there was something like, it was in the square. I think it was in Tartu in Estonia. It was either Tallinn or Tartu. I can't remember. I can never remember which one is which. But there's a big square in the middle of town, and there was about 10,000 people out in the square. And all we could see when we started playing traditional Irish music, mixed with like rock and blues and all this kind of stuff. And all we could see was people jumping up and down and up and down and up and down. And the people started climbing up on the stage. I remember security guards had to come up on stage and stop people from climbing up on stage, and we didn't want to get off. The stage manager was telling us we had to wrap it up, that the main act was coming on, but we literally played until they plugged us out. So we had all of that experience as well. So I lived, again, I lived all that, and I've done all that, and after that I started the company, and that, and it was really when I started trying to achieve what I was trying to achieve in the company, I very much misjudged the price that I needed to make it a reality. And
mm.
it was, as I say, that was one of the more destructive times in my life. But
So what, was this all piano, or were you doing different instruments, or?
piano and drums would be so when I would have competed on piano, and I would have done grades and all that kind of stuff on piano, and then the drums was more what I would have performed with. Was I never really performed as such with the piano. It was all competition stuff, but I would have performed with the drums. And it was a brilliant time in my life when I was playing. I suppose it was very, very enjoyable. Learned an awful lot from it, and got to meet some phenomenal people. When the company started, that's when I kind of decided I wanted to make a living in that industry, but I didn't want to play. I didn't want to make a living playing, because I knew a lot of people that made a living playing, and I didn't like the look of the lifestyle that they had. And I decided that I'd rather produce shows and put on shows and run events and that kind of stuff. So that's when I kind of went behind the curtain as such and started organizing them and that kind of thing. And again, it was a very enjoyable time in my life, and again, made a lot of really good friends and made a lot of really good connections. But as I say, it wasn't prepared for what was required, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Just, I'm quite interested because you come across as having quite a logical mind. So the more sort of the more physical subjects and things like that, and the engineering side and the logic brain. But then there's music, which is more creative side, is it not? I'm just curious. Curious about the dichotomy there.
Yeah, I guess I can do it. I have that ability where I can create it either way. I can create something for you where it's pre-planned and measured down to the last millimeter, um, or I can just create something from here and bring it into the world, I suppose, without doing any planning, and just it just arrives. And that's more, I suppose, comes from the musical side of things. I would have played. I honestly don't ever remember a time in my life where I didn't play music. You know, so I can create it in either way. Yeah.
Yeah, so what's your, in terms of instruments then, what's your go-to? You know, you're saying you still play obviously, and you know, do you have a preference or?
Not really. Um, I love both of them. Yeah, I love both of them. I think it depends on what kind of mood I'm in.
Hmm.
You know, um, if I need to release, if I need to release, then I'd probably go to the drums. But if I want to chill out, maybe I'd go to the piano.
Oh wow, cool. So tell me this. So leaving cert, left school, and then you were straight into playing the music, were you? Is that right?
Well, the music was I was playing music right throughout all that. There was college. I studied in college for a few years, and the company came out of that, and everything else. Um, and that's yeah, that was a very, I suppose, at the time, very enjoyable, but again, as I say, very chaotic as well, and ultimately was a destructive time. Um, but there was a lot going on behind the scenes that I suppose no one else saw at the time.
Mm. Do you remember? You know, it's interesting because it's something you talked a lot about there. You know, and it's almost a point when you almost segmented. You know, you had the outward facing you and the inward facing. You know what? You know, here's what everyone sees. It's the duck effect. You know, above looks lovely, down below it's
Yeah,
paddling like hell.
yeah.
You know, do you remember that happening, or was it just something that happened?
In hindsight, to be honest, it all feels like a very short period of time, although it was years. But in hindsight, and when it all came crashing down, it feels like it came crashing down overnight. But that's not the reality either. That's not what happened either. Um, yeah, I suppose there was a little bit of the duck effect in it. People's perception of me versus what was actually going on behind the scenes. Most certainly, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, what was your proudest moment out of that whole experience then?
Hmm. My proudest moment. God, that's a very good question. My proudest moment out of that whole experience. That's a very good question, Peter. I don't really know what my proudest moment was. I think my proudest moment was actually in the early days of the company. We produced a show about a man called Admiral William Brown, who is from my hometown, or was from my hometown. And he's the man that liberated Argentina from the Spanish, like way back when, 1700s, I believe it was. And we produced the show, and we put it on in a hotel for tourists and all that. I think my proudest moment was when we had the Argentine ambassador to Ireland come visit the show, along with the Taoiseach at the time as well. And we got a write up in the Southern Cross, which is a national paper in Argentina. So I think that's probably because it was a real, it was a very important story. It was a very powerful story, and it's a very, it's a story from my home, and to get that level of recognition globally for it, and to get, was really, really, I think that was probably my proudest moment. It was that night when they were all there.
And the irony of the empowerment of that in your current title is quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's no, it was just interesting to hear that. So then obviously the production company. Then what happened after that? Tell me.
Well, after that, yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know which way it was up after that, because the world didn't make sense to me anymore. Because as I said, coming through school and everything else, I just knew you looked at what it was you wanted, and what do I have to do to get it, and you went and did it. And I thought I had done that, and I didn't get what I was looking for, and I couldn't understand that, and I didn't. didn't understand that or why that had happened. And so nothing, nothing in my life made sense anymore. That's, as I say, when I was prescribed the medication, the antidepressants, and I made that decision not to. And I went back to work, and I was working in hospitality for a while. I worked in hospitality for about a year. I didn't particularly like that so much. And during that time as well, I could see some of the old habits coming back that I didn't like. So I got out of there, and I ended up selling mobile phones and mobile phone contracts and all of that kind of stuff. And I absolutely loved that. I had some extremely good managers and supports within there, in terms of my store manager, my regional manager were, absolutely phenomenal people at that time. And it was so I was happy in that role, if you like. And I was happy in what I was doing and everything else, which kind of gave me that sense of security to actually explore what was this decision I made that day with those antidepressants, and why, how has everything happened, and how have I got here, and what's going on really. And that's when I started to study, if you like, the decision that I'd made and what it meant. And that's where I started to come up with these, what I now call the key insights of power in the individual. And there was a lot of them in the early days. There was an awful lot of them, and now it's boiled down to 8. And from that I created a system whereby I could utilize to achieve whatever it is I wanted to achieve. And this time I understood about price and how important it is to know price. And if there was an awful lot in it. There was an awful lot in it. It has evolved an awful lot since. In the early days, it was literally just a system, a set of tools that you could use to accomplish whatever it is you wanted to accomplish, right? It has evolved an awful lot more since then, and it now encompasses a lot of empowerment stuff in terms of what I call true responsibility, and being truly responsible for everything that's in your world. So if you can imagine, there is the world and there is your world, and the world is made up of your world, my world, and lots of little worlds, of everyone else, of all the individuals in the world. I am responsible for everything that's in my world, and I'm responsible for everything that remains in my world. So if it's there because I've allowed it in. If it stays there because I allow it to stay. And when you take that level of responsibility, you become exceptionally empowered, because within your world, there is nothing that you do not have control over, So it has evolved. Again, language became a very, very important part of it. And because look, at the end of the day, language are sounds we make that we assign value and meaning to. That's all they are, just noises that we make, that we assign. And it's very interesting, Pete. You can have a conversation with somebody and using the same language have two very, very different conversations, so that became very, very important. And I remember in the early days of coaching this stuff, being very frustrated in not being able to communicate the message, simply because we were using the same words, but we were assigning different values and meaning. So that became a very big part of the process as well. And that went on for a couple of years, and eventually I decided, this is what I want to do, and I want to share this with people. I shared it with one individual who was going through a rough time. I'd love to tell her story, but I don't have it's her story, but I would say to this day, and I've helped a lot of people with this system, she was the very, very first person that took it on. And to this day, I'd say she's the one that has done the most with it and achieved the most with it, phenomenal story. And it was after that experience that I realized, because initially I thought, this is great. This is something for me. I figured out how my world works, and I figured out what works for me, kind of thing. It wasn't until I shared it with her then I kind of realized, well, actually, this is not just for me. And maybe I should share this with other people, and maybe we should see what can come of this. So it was shortly after that I decided, again, using that language, decided that this is what I want to do, and it's very important work. And I think it's very important actually now in what's going on in the world right now. I think it's very, very important, this type of information for people. to help guide us through what's going on at the minute and find our own way out of the situation that so many people find themselves in now with what's going on in the world.
Well, it is a very powering thing to do. I mean, to be able to, help yourself, but also help others.
Mm.
Just out of curiosity, I mean, what makes a good decision?
What makes a good decision? The decision, to be honest, there's no such thing as a bad decision in my opinion. Um, the only bad decision is deciding not to decide. Or rather, I should say that's the worst decision you can make, is deciding not to decide.
Well, that is a decision.
Yeah, and so that is certainly a bad decision, deciding not to decide. I think a good decision would be when you have, as I say, you have looked at the goals, you know what you want, you know what it is you want to achieve, and you have been, obviously, if there's a decision involved, you've been presented with an opportunity of some description, right? So you know what it is you want to achieve. You've looked at the opportunity, you've weighed that opportunity against your goals, in the sense of, does it bring me closer to my goals? How much closer does it bring me to my goals? What do I need to do? And you get some concept of all of that, and you make a decision based on that. But, I speak a lot about success and failure within what I do as well. And in actual fact, when you get down to it, and again, bearing in mind, success and failure are just noises that I'm assigning value and meaning to. And it may not necessarily be the same value and meaning that other people are assigning as they're watching this. Okay. But, in failure is oftentimes the right decision. You're muted there, Pete.
Sorry, give me a bit more there. Sorry.
So failure is oftentimes the right decision, because, something I see, or rather that I have come across several times, is people who have a goal and they're deciding they're going to put this much investment into it, be that time, be that upskilling, be that money, whatever it is, they're going to put that much into it. So they put that in and they don't get the desired outcome. Okay. And they go again and they go, okay, we'll try again. They put the same amount in and they don't get the desired outcome. We're going to try again. What's happening there is they haven't really weighed the goal, and they might have spent a colossal amount of time in this kind of Ferris wheel cycle of rinse and repeat, of trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. Whereas if at the start you had actually measured the goal, measured the weight of the goal, what is it going to cost you? You might have actually looked at it and said, you know what? I'm not prepared to pay that price for that goal. And you could have decided to fail at achieving that goal and saved yourself a hell of a lot of time, and that's what I find quite often with a lot of people. We've heard it in other versions. You would have heard it from a lot of various different people in the industry and coaching, and that learn how to say no. It would be somewhat in line with that kind of thinking of learn how to say no. But there's a difference between learning how to say no and knowing why you're saying no. So that's something that I found. If you were to look at the definition of success and failure within Power of the Individual, success is the fulfillment of a goal after the required effort. And it's that required effort that is the price that I've spoken about in essence, and failure is the lack of input or the lack of effort. Okay. So when you haven't failed until you've stopped putting in effort. And the only reason you should stop putting in effort is because you have decided that the effort you're putting in isn't worth the goal. To you, it might be worth the goal to someone else, but to you, it's not, or that particular goal isn't serving your greater goal, or whatever the case may be. The beautiful thing about that is it means that success and failure are they're not things that happen. They're things you choose. And if you can in order to stop putting in effort, you must choose to do that. And the beautiful thing about that is, as quickly as you decided to stop putting in effort, you can decide to start putting in effort. And there's a lot more in it than that when you get into it on the program and everything else. But that's a kind of a very quick overview of the first two key insights actually of powering individual success and failure. They're options, they're not outcomes.
And are you seeing that is that a conscious pattern, or is that it's coming from the subconscious, or what way are you seeing that?
It's a conscious pattern, yeah. It's a
Okay.
conscious pattern that, like anything else, when I know certainly when I started practicing this first, I would be sitting down with a pen and paper and having to write it out and really go through. And I'm not a writer, like you know what I mean, but I had to get the process out of myself and into the world, because as you rightly said earlier on, Pete, I'm visual and I'm kinesthetic, so I had to get it out of myself so I could see it in front of me, if that makes sense, you know. And very much would have been doing that in the early days. But it's like anything else, as you work on it and refine it and practice it, it becomes almost second nature, and it just becomes as easy as breathing, you know.
Well, yeah, no, it's always interesting the way, because I know myself, I'm a doodler. You know, it's reading and writing is not something I'll ever do for leisure or pleasure. You know, but you give me a big whiteboard and a big pen, and I'm as happy as a kid in the sandpit. You know, that's the great thing about it. So it's just interesting to see, because obviously you mentioned earlier there that you've a very strong imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And can you describe any more for us than that? You know, how you see the world?
How I see the world, there's a piece that I do. It's not one of the key insights now, but I do have a piece on, we all see the world through the lens of our own reality. And again, I think everything we communicate and everything we put out goes out through that lens as well. So, and where somebody is describing something they see or that they've experienced in the world, and they're describing it through their lens, they're seeing it through their lens, and then they're describing it out through their lens. And if I don't have a similar lens, it's going to be very, very hard for me to understand that, and vice versa. If someone doesn't have a very similar lens to me, it might be quite difficult for them to understand what I'm trying to communicate. So that's certainly something as well that I've worked on. But how I see the world, I think I see very much with my imagination. I think I see very much into the future. As in, when I see the world, I see what's going to happen next. So when if I'm on a path and I see a dog running down the path, I see the dog running down the path, but then I also see where he might be in 10 seconds. Is he going to be, he could veer off into the trees. I see that as well, and I suppose I see multiple versions of reality, possible realities at the same time. I think that's the best way I have of describing how I see the world. I see what's in front of me, in terms of, if we talk about in terms of timeline. I see what's in front of me, and I don't really ever focus on the past or what's in the past. It's there for reference, but very much I think I see the world in the sense of what's going to happen next.
Hmm. That's interesting, because you mentioned there that history was of no interest to you, so
Yeah,
the past is of no interest either.
past is the past. Yeah,
I get
yeah,
that, because I would be very similar in thinking. So I resonate with that, and I appreciate it's not everyone thinks that way. I know my wife would be very different, and other people love history. To me,
yeah,
I'm kind of going, well, that's kind of gone. So,
yeah,
in terms of perception, or would you be quite perceptive or intuitive?
yeah, yeah. I think I would. Yeah, I mean, I've had to. Yeah, it's something that I've had to work on, particularly in terms of perception. And again, referencing back to the lens of reality, okay, which is just our perception of reality. Whenever I find in conversation, you know, if I'm not getting it or they're not getting it, and again, we're oftentimes in conversation, again, we're using language, which again are these noises that we've assigned value and meaning to. Um, I will look for that word or that noise that we're getting caught up on, and we'll try and clarify that so that we can get on to a similar page. One thing, someone said it about me, someone that I coached actually, They said, you're very good at seeing the world through my eyes. And that's something that I had to work on. That's something that I had to develop. But it's not that I'm seeing the world through their eyes. I'm getting down to the value and the meaning that they're assigning to these noises, so that I can get a perspective on what they're actually seeing in the world and how they see the world. You know. So I think I am quite perceptive, yeah. And
I think, I mean, I think anyone of that, and I only say because again, it resonates very strongly with me. Is you're quite intuitive, as you say, is almost you see stuff that's going to happen before it happens, and quite often, you pick up on the slightest bit of body language or change in energy or pattern or something else, and the logical brain just goes, "That's easy. Can they not see this?"
yeah, 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 yeah,
And it's like that very perception or intuitive, when you see that, and the more aware you are of that, it was interesting. Do you do you have an inner critic at all, or I mean, what's the noise level like in your own head?
um I suppose, okay, I suppose we probably all have a little bit of an inner critic at some point. I don't I'm not a big fan of criticism.
Okay.
um I'm not a big fan of criticism. I'm a big fan of making things better.
Hmm.
you know and I would look at something and go, yeah, okay, you might do something, you might go, okay, that didn't work because it just might not have worked. But I would never go, you're an idiot, that didn't work. You're kind of
Hmm.
going, okay, that didn't work, why didn't it work? And um, finding why it didn't work, and then how can we get it to work. So in a way, yeah, you could say it's criticism, but I wouldn't call it that.
Hmm.
I would say it's more, you know exploring what it is you're doing in kind of real time. And again, as I say, I'm more into making it better, finding the shortfalls, sure, and finding where it's not working, and how you can make it work better. But um, and again, look, this all comes back to assigning values and meanings to noises. It's I see criticism, and when I hear criticism, I hear it in a very negative way, you know, and other people don't. So again, that's a difference of perception. And again, I know it's a challenge I've had with one of the key insights, true responsibility. When I use the word responsibility, a lot of people go to that place of when they were getting told off and being told to take responsibility for your life. But that's not the meaning that I'm assigning to the word, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
again, to answer your question, through my meaning and the value and meaning that I assign to the word criticism, no, I don't criticize myself. But other people might potentially have a different meaning of self-assessment when they use criticism. Certainly, I do
Hmm.
self-assess. I do self-assess, and I improve.
Hmm.
So if that's the meaning that we mean with criticism, then yes. But I would understand it as a very negative thing. I wouldn't use it. No.
Hmm. And your perception, your belief in yourself, how would talk to me about that?
Um, my perception and my belief in myself. Um, I mean, I am me. Um, I look at myself in the mirror, and there I am. You know, I don't know how much more belief you need in yourself, beyond that. I am here, and I know what I'm capable of, and I know what I can do. Um, and it's not a question of, and this brings me into a couple of other the key insights. When it comes to believing and that, and having belief, it's not. So there's another couple of insights that are can and can't. Okay. And what I say about can is the most obvious truth you would ever tell yourself, and can't is the most obvious lie you would ever tell yourself. Um, where someone says to me, I can do that, particularly if it's something that has already been done in the world. Kind of going, Yeah, that's obvious. You know, you can, anything that has been done can be done by virtue of the fact it has been done, you
Okay.
know.
Hmm.
And can't, more often than not, is a deflection of responsibility, you know, where we don't want to do something and we have deflected the responsibility of that over onto something else that we're saying is the reason we don't want to do it. Now, look, there's obviously, you know, if there are obvious things, you know, whereas if you have physical limitations in terms of, you know, if you were an amputee or if you were, you know, or anything like that, there's obviously physical limitations within that, but I'm talking in a more general sense here. And what I replace that language with is will and won't. And you, that brings in a whole other level of responsibility into it and a whole different level of decisiveness. So you can say, yeah, I can do that. That's great. And you feel good. You get a momentary sense of satisfaction, but there's no commitment in it. You know, there's no commitment in saying you can do something, you know. Um, I can go for a 10K run today, but I can tell you I'm not going to. You know, whereas if you, when you use language like will, and for the viewers out there, if anyone wants to try this for, like, just give it a couple of weeks and just be conscious of it. Every time you find yourself saying can or can't, replace it with will or won't, and just see how your body reacts to that, because your body will have a reaction to it. It's very interesting when your body starts reacting to that. Just replace those two words, can and can't, with will and won't for a couple of weeks. And I'd actually be very, if anyone wants to get back onto the fire in the belly and let them know they got on, I'd actually be very interested in hearing how people got on with that. Because all of a sudden you get you know, you start feeling maybe a little uncomfortable,
Mm.
because now the buck stops with you. I've said I will do that. I've said I won't do that. Why did I say I won't do that? Why did I make that decision? Am I happy with my justification for not doing it?
Mm.
Know? Whereas when you say, "Oh, I can't do that because X, Y, Z," well, it's X, Y, Z's fault. And if you want further explanation, go to X, Y, Z. But when you say, "I won't do that," you've made a decision, and are you happy with it? And again, as I say, will is committal. Will is commitment. You know. So just, yeah, if anyone wants to give that a go, that could be actually quite fun to hear how
Mm.
people get on with that.
And just on that, I mean, can you compare sort of can with could?
Could is uncertain. So
Okay.
could is a sense of uncertainty. I would say there's well, look, there's, again, we're back we're back to value and meaning, right?
Mm.
So are you saying I I could do that if I wanted to,
Mm.
or are you saying I could do that, I'm not sure?
Well, that's a. I could do that. I'm not sure. Is it double, if not a triple meaning in it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're saying I could do that if I wanted to, you could be saying I can do that. I know I can do that
Mm.
if I wanted to, but I don't want to, or maybe I do want to, or whatever. So there could be an element of certainty in I could if I wanted to, but I could, I'm not sure, is certainly, there's a lack of information there. And I think, again, just bringing it back to the part of the individual stuff with the knowing your price and weighing the price, measuring the price, that's probably where the information is missing. You're not sure what the price is. I think I could do that, you know.
Mm.
I could, I'm not sure. Um, so yeah, again, I think there's information lacking there, and you know, you you're probably looking for a little bit more information around getting a bit more certainty on it. Yeah,
Just going back, and it's something that's come up a couple of times there. I'm just curious, how would you compare price to cost?
that's a very good question. Price to cost, and again, I think I guess what we're back to, value and meaning. Um, Whereas cost, again, is something that's always quite negative. So I think if someone finds themselves using that language, they're really saying this is going to take something away from me that I don't want to be taken away from me. Okay. Because I often use this, you know, I've done coaching and consulting in sales and business development as well, and I've often used this actually in that regard, in certain terms of always communicate from a point of view of value rather than cost, because value is when there's a gain. If it is of value to me, then I am gaining. If it is a cost to me, then I am losing. So I think, again, very, very well spotted, the language within that. The price is what you pay. And I think cost and value is possibly just a perception of the price. Similarly, I do a piece on this with difficulty, where easy and hard are not real. Nothing is easy, nothing is hard. There is just the goal and the price that must be paid. Whereas easy and hard are the language that we use to describe our perception of the price. So if we perceive the price as being high, we will describe it as being hard. If we perceive the price as being low, we will describe it as being low. And I'll do a very, very quick example there, Pete. Have you ever played music in your life?
No.
So if I said to you, Pete, I'm short a drummer tonight, I want you to jump up on stage and play for 2 hours to 10,000 people. Gig is starting at 8 o'clock tonight. You, without saying whether you would or you wouldn't, you might perceive that in your own head. You might say, God, that'd be very hard for me to do. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Whereas I would say that'd be quite easy for me to do perceptually, right? Because I've done. I'm muted there, sorry.
Right.
So I've done that before. It's perceptually quite easy for me. So
just Eamonn, I think you might have switched to microphone.
I can't hear you there, Pete.
I think you've your headphones turned off.
Hello.
Hello.
No, I'm not getting you at all.
Yeah, it's your headphones. That's it now, I think, is it?
Oh yeah, I have you back there. Brilliant.
It's all right. So I think you lost your headphones there for a sec.
Oh, okay, perfect. So yeah, it was. Where was I? It was So for you, we're saying it perceptually quite hard. For me, I'm saying it's perceptually quite easy. Yet the task is the same. So how can the same thing be easy and hard at the same time? Whereas the only difference is your perception of it versus my perception of it. And I think the same could be said for cost versus value. I think, again, those are words that we would use to describe our perception of the price. Whereas if we can perceive the price as being of value to us, then we are perceiving that we will gain from paying that price. Whereas if we're perceiving the price as being of cost to us, we are perceiving that as something that it will take away from us.
Interesting. I didn't think you were going to get my brain to think this much, but I love it. But I'm going to put you straight in then another one and saying, how do you adjust your reality then?
Every day. I adjust my reality every day. Again, bear in mind what Power of the Individual does is it teaches you how to reverse engineer those bits of conditioning that you don't like, or that you don't want in your life, and it teaches you how to replace them with whatever you do like. So, a word that's been bantered around a lot lately is the whole concept of, and it's gone out of my head, domestication. So self-domestication, right? So how we're domesticated by our parents and how we're domesticated by all these different influences. If we want to use that language, what Power of the Individual does is essentially gives you control over your own domestication in terms of what you want that domestication to look like. So I'm constantly looking at that, and all Power of the Individual is a set of tools. So it's like any other set of tools. And if you think of a builder building a house, okay, and there's a crooked wall in the house, it's gone up wrong, it's leaning to the left or something, okay? So the person that's paying for the house to be built comes to the builder and says, that wall is wrong, I need you to take it down and put it back up again. And that's easy. Again, easy just being his perception of it, right? Because he has the tools and he knows how to use them, and he's put in the hours to learn and he's probably done that exact same task several times before, okay? Taking down walls and putting up walls and all that. The same can be said for how I suppose do all of that, and how power the individual does all of that, in the sense of, if you think of your mindset and your conditioning as a house, and there are bits of it, or a construction site, and there's bits of it that you don't want. When you have the tools and you know how to use them, it's quite easy to build whatever you want within that space, okay, of your mind. But having the tools, like when people come on the program, they get all the tools in like the first hour. They have all the tools after the first hour. And this is, the next course is coming up as a 6 week course, 6-week program. But again, they'll have all the tools in the very first hour. But if you have a chisel in one hand and a hammer in the other, and you don't know that the hammer needs to hit the chisel to make the chisel do stuff, then you're not going to do anything with the hammer or the chisel. So you'll get the tools, and then it's all about learning how to use the tools. And when you have that, it's very, very easy to build whatever reality it is that you want to create within your mindset and your conditioning and your self-domestication. And again, that's coming back to your world. That's everything in your world, not the world. You build your world whatever way you want. And again, it ties back into whatever is in your world is in your world because you've allowed it in, and whatever remains because you allow it to remain. Where some people, the struggle some people have maybe is that they think something is in their world indefinitely and that they have no control over it and that it has to remain there, and that's predominantly because they don't have the tools, and even if they did, they don't know how to use them, whereas when you have the tools and you know how to use them, it's very, very easy to get rid of these things and bring in the things that you want to build the world that you want to build.
I'm still domestication for me when I go down there is I'm thinking of a cat, whether it's been trained or not. So, so the perception of language is quite interesting. So
Yeah.
In terms of almost, I suppose, self-reviewing. I mean, how would you watch your own language, or what should people look out for?
It's again, it's about becoming aware. When you say a word, what do you actually mean? And I asked someone recently, we were talking about success, right? And this person said they didn't see themselves as being successful. And I asked them to describe what they meant by success, and they gave me a description of what they meant by success. And I said, okay, so have you done, so they gave like 4 or 5 things that meant success to them. And I said, have you done those 4 or 5 things? Have you achieved those 4 or 5 things? He says, yeah, I have. I said, okay, so you're successful. I said, now, can you describe success for me within terms of business? And they described it within terms of business. And I said, have you achieved all of those things? No, I haven't. Okay, so you're not successful. No. We just said you were successful. So how can you be successful and not successful? Whereas there was no real definition there for the word success, that covered all bases. So it's to become very, very aware of what meaning are you applying to, what meaning are you applying with the words you're using? Okay, so what is the meaning and value that you're actually applying to the words you're using? So you'll hear a lot of people saying might, if, possibly, and, we'll try, and you're with that type, that type of language is, how would I say it? There's an element of a commitment there because you're committing to trying, or, we might give it a go and we might try and all of this kind of stuff, and we'll try. So there is an element of commitment, but you are already, again, in terms of talking about tools, you're already bringing the tools forward that will build the opposite thing for you.
Because it's very loose.
Yeah, you it's already there. It's not certain. So be conscious. Be conscious of that. It takes a lot of getting used to, and I know certainly for me, it took a lot of my peers to start pulling me in my own language, and if can be a big one for a lot of people. I'll do that if, why are you giving that conditional piece away to something else? Because when you do that, you're giving power to that other thing. You're
Mm.
giving your power to that other thing,
Mm-hmm.
you're giving them control. I'll do it if they do that. Now they have control, which means you don't have responsibility, which is a very comfortable place for a lot of people. And that's fine. That's fine. There's no problem with that. So, and again, it depends on where you want to go and how much you want to achieve, but it's very much, I spot it now as soon as if I'm saying something, I'll spot it very, very quickly if I've used language that is not going to serve me,
Mm.
or that is going to restrict my growth or restrict my journey. I'll catch it very, very quickly, and I'll have a very brief conversation with myself in my head saying, did you mean that? No, I didn't. Okay. Or did you mean that? Well, okay, so how committed are we to this? Well, do we need to stop doing this? Maybe. Do we need to stop doing this? Yeah, okay, we do
Mm.
stop doing this. Because again, a lot of it comes down to, what are you wasting time doing with your ifs and your buts and your maybes and your tries? What are you wasting time doing when you could be
Mm.
deciding on something and putting all that time into that? So it's a tough question to answer, Pete. What words in particular to look out for?
Mm.
But I would say, in a general sense, if you're looking towards achieving something, look out for language that gives you an exit, that gives you an excuse. Any language that's giving you an excuse, watch that, because
Okay.
now you're giving yourself the justification when it doesn't work.
Mm.
And watch the language there. You're giving yourself the justification when it doesn't work.
Mm.
So that's what I would say. Watch out for language that allows for excuses.
Cool. Thank you. So in terms of mentorship, or this the language pattern, have you ever studied NLP or anything of that nature, or?
Not officially, in the sense of I haven't gone and studied it under a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
I love NLP.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly something that I have read up on, and I listened to a lot of people talking about it,
Mm.
and I do really like it. I wouldn't have an in-depth knowledge of it or any expertise in it in terms of qualifications wise, but yeah, certainly I really it is something that I do enjoy. Yeah.
Well, from a mentorship or an inspirational point of view, where's your go-tos? What floats your boat?
To be honest, look, there's loads of big names that I could throw out there, like that we all know. Jim Rohn, I love Jim Rohn stuff. Um, but honestly, my biggest mentors have been people that are in my life, people that are actually close to me in my life. My mother actually is one of my biggest mentors when I look back at how she used to speak to us when we were kids. Um, Something that she always used to say is, today is the first day of the rest of your life. What are you going to do with it? And I'll be paraphrasing here now because I can't exactly remember, but she used to tell me all the time, particularly when I got in trouble, she used to tell me all the time that I'm the only one in control of what I do. Nobody else can control you. I'm the only one that can control my actions and what I do. Um, and she used to get me to think about my actions and consequence and what they mean and all that kind of stuff. In more recent times, there have been, there have been quite a few. I think, if I'm being totally honest, the most impactful person in recent times from a mentor point of view has probably been Anthony Ware, that runs Transform. He's probably been the biggest influence, and certainly I would recommend everyone to go and check out his stuff. But I think, yeah, my biggest influences have always been people that are actually in my circle close to me. I have been influenced by a lot of some of the big names as well, and really like some of their content and everything else. But certainly my biggest influences have actually always been people that are close to me in my circle. Yeah.
Interesting. So, what's your earliest memory?
God, my earliest memory.
Just a bit of a pattern break for you there.
What is my earliest memory? I think God, I don't know. Oh, you know what? I think my earliest memory is being stung by a bee. Yeah, but I'm not 100% sure if it's a memory because it's actually on video. So
Oh
I'm
well.
not I'm not 100% sure if it's a memory or if that memory has been created based on the videos that I watched growing up. But I got stung in the eye by a bee when I was a kid, very,
What
very,
age,
very young.
what age were you?
I was like maybe 4 or 5,
Well,
like very, very, very young,
mm,
um, and maybe younger. Actually, I can't remember. I actually don't know. But um, yeah, I have this memory of going out the back door and seeing my toy tractor in front of me, and I was going for the toy tractor, and yeah, the next thing, this thing just landed on my face and stabbed me in my eye with its stinger. Um, that's yeah, I think that's my earliest memory. Yeah.
well, it's amazing what all the things you can conjure up and all the memories from that.
Mm, yeah.
You know. So what then? I mean, just out of interest, I mean, would you be spiritual at all, or and I'm not interested in your religion per se, but power of universe and things like that. Is that do anything for you?
Yeah. Look at yeah, I would be. You know, um, I would. I believe in. Look at. I believe that we're all energy. You know, as in vibration. Big. Vibration is a huge one for me. We all have a resonance. We all resonate at a certain frequency.
Mm,
And the planet resonates at a certain frequency, and there's loads of experiments out there and loads of stuff that you can look up as to what happens when you mess around with those frequencies, both positive and negative. Things that can happen. And even with inanimate objects and that kind of stuff. I'm sure you've seen the one of the glass that kind of liquefies when you change its resonance.
mm,
So what I would say is I think there's an awful lot there that maybe we don't understand yet. you
sure.
know and I think sometimes we as a race we can be quite egotistical in the sense that we are top of the food chain and that you know we know it all and we know everything, and look at us, we can go to the moon and we can do send satellites out to probes out to other planets and all this kind of stuff. But I think there's still an awful lot here in the world that we don't understand. And I mean, you just a very, very simple example of it is look at the our primary sight, our primary sense being sight, and the amount of stuff that we know we can't see in the world because our eyes don't actually recognize that data or have the capacity or capabilities of recognizing that data.
Mm,
So that's what I would say. I think there is certainly an awful lot out there that we don't fully understand yet.
sure. And from a fire in the belly point of view, I mean, do you think everyone's got fire in the belly? And are you born with it?
I think 100% you're born with it. you
Okay.
know um and I think every child, every toddler certainly has fire in the belly. I think some people lose it somewhere along the way, or it gets put out somewhere along the way. I mean, you just look at, I was having a conversation with someone the other day and I said, have you any idea how much groundwork you had to put in just to know how to make a cup of tea, you know, as a child, as a baby? And there was an experiment done where they just got like ordinary objects like spoons and cups and whatever, and they put the, whatever you call them, the masks on that can monitor brain activity and all that. I don't know what they're called, but put one on a baby and one on an adult. And they were monitoring the brain activity, and they put the spoon in front of the adult, and there was just a little blip somewhere in the head, and it's kind of okay, that's where the information is stored on what a spoon is. They put it in front of a baby, and the baby's brain like lit up, went on fire. What the hell is this? So I certainly think every toddler, every baby, every child has a fire in the belly, because if they didn't, they'd never learn and never evolve and grow in the way that they do. I mean, look at the task involved in a baby learning how to crawl and then learning how to walk. If you didn't have fire in the belly, Um, I don't think that would be possible. You know, somewhere along the line, some people lose it. You know, and then some people find it again. But I think it's there. I think it's there for everyone. You know, it's just to find that thing, find that thing they're curious about, that thing they want to know, the thing they really want to know, and the area they really want to occupy in life. You know, I think, you know, we live in a world where we grow up and we're very much told what we should do, and the expectations that are put on us, you know, are very, very strong. You know, and you do this and you do X, Y, Z, and you live your life this way, and that's kind of it. You know,
Mm.
that's your lot. You stop being a child. I don't think I've ever stopped being a child. You know, in that regard, in terms of that curiosity and that eagerness to learn new things and to develop and grow. You know, people think you grow up and you stop growing, but it's not true. But yes, I think everyone has the fire in the belly. Certainly,
Mm.
um, some people have just, it has gone down a little bit, or maybe it's at embers. You know.
Mm. Out of curiosity, just going back a wee bit, I mean, you talked about different people's version of success and interpretation of success. Well, what's success for you?
Fulfillment of a goal after the required effort.
Oh, look at that, straight out.
So whatever it is, that whatever the goal is, you know, um, figuring out the required effort and then doing it. You know, so that can, like, you know, this is the thing. This is the thing. We are all successful. When I defy anybody, I defy anybody that's watching to use that description and come back to me and say they have not been successful, that they have never succeeded. You know, it's if, and again, going back to the toddler, because if you learned how to walk, then you know how to succeed. How does a child learn how to walk? It watches everyone else walking around it, and it measures what it needs to do. It figures out the price. It knows it needs to try and stand up, and it needs to work the legs and everything else. It knows what it needs to do, and it just goes and does it. You know, so everybody is successful. Everybody has experienced success. Um, so that is what success is to me.
Mm. And would you say you're successful?
Absolutely.
Cool.
I would also say I'm a failure. And here's the paradox, you know, but it's not really a paradox. I choose to fail at certain things that don't serve my goals. You know, so, and it's something I see a lot of people doing, getting on this rinse and repeat cycle of trying and trying and trying and trying and trying, when maybe it's not something I've had in the last, since everything, you know, since the lockdown and everything, I've had an awful lot of opportunities presented to me, and people asking me to look at opportunities and this, that, and the other. And I have chosen to fail at most of them at the very, very outset. Very curious about all of them. And there was a time in my life where I probably would have said yes to all of them and had to go at all of them because they interest me and looks like great fun and everything else, you know.
Mm.
But I've chosen to fail at most of them because they don't serve what it is that I'm trying to create and what it is that I'm trying to achieve. Um,
I'm curious about this because what's the difference between choosing to fail and adjustment of a goal?
so adjustment of a goal for me is when you've misinterpreted the price. Define adjustment of a goal for me, actually.
Well, I suppose some would say failure is just something that you haven't been successful at yet.
Mm-hmm.
So some would say there is no such thing as failure. It just hasn't been
Yes, yeah.
achieved or anything else. I suppose mentally, again, it's interpretation of language, and this is where I'm in my head. It's sort of choosing to fail a goal is a decision, but that in itself is a success because you've taken a decision to not to continue that thing. So that's not necessarily a fail. A fail has a very negative connotation
Mm-hmm.
in my head.
Yeah, and again, here's where, and you're 100% right. And here's where we're coming back again to value and meaning assigned to sounds. So this is a prime example of what we were talking about earlier on. You and I are having a conversation. We're having slightly different conversations. You know,
Hmm.
So and these are the nuances, you know. But what you're describing is absolutely right. It serves the decision to fail serves the success of something else.
Mm.
So you are in another. If you look at it from that perspective, and if you use that perception of it, then yes, you are succeeding. That choice is a choice of success. So here's where it all comes back to the importance of the meaning and value assigned to words, and what perception that those create, and how that can create misunderstanding and everything else. Um, but your initial question about adjusting the goal, are you on about adjusting the actual goal or the route to the goal?
I think I probably just have a negative jerk against the word fail.
Mm.
So, whether it's adjustment of the goal or whatever, just I don't know that anything, everything is a lesson for me. Failure always had a previously, and maybe it's my void being my value is fail in the past was a very negative connotation. Now I believe we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Now whether that's through your successes or your fails or whatever way it is. When you don't pass an exam or something doesn't quite go the way you expected, I believe is exactly the way it's supposed to have happened,
Mm.
and you are where you're supposed to be. So I think it's more my reaction to the word fail than
Yeah.
actual
So if we
connection to
look
a
at it,
goal.
if we look at it from this way, okay, so you take action towards a goal and you go, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get this, and then you do this and you don't get this. I wouldn't call that failure.
Okay.
That all that tells me is we got the price wrong.
Hmm.
Because if this was the price, we would have got this. So
Hmm.
if we put this in and we haven't got this, then this wasn't the price. So we haven't failed. Now the choice. Now we have a choice. We have a choice here, where okay, do we now choose to fail and stop trying, or do we pay the price? And the first thing we've got to do is okay, well that's not the price. How how much more beyond that? How much do we need to put with that? What extra do we need to bring to the table, or what else do we need to bring to the table? What is the price? So there'll be, you're 100% right. There will be learnings and there will be lessons within that will give us insight as to what the price actually is. So
Hmm.
we remeasure the price, and then we make a decision: do we go again and pay the price and get the goal, or is now the price of the goal beyond what we're prepared to pay?
Hmm.
And in that scenario, then you choose. If it's beyond what you're prepared to pay, then you choose to fail, because choosing to fail is the right decision if it's beyond what you're prepared to pay, and that does serve, as you correctly said, that does serve your success.
Hmm.
So again, it's a very different meaning for the word failure, I suppose.
Hmm. No, it's interesting. It's very interesting. Just out of interest, what would you describe as your values? What are your core values?
Values. Again, this is always a question that I struggle with to communicate correctly, um, because I always say my core value is value, uh, which is, if you're doing something that doesn't create value, then why are you doing it? You know. So I suppose my core values are creating value within the real world. So be that in your job, that could be in your job, and the value you're creating for the business that you're working for. Um, that could be at home with your family, the time you're spending with your family, and what value is that creating. It could be, if you're a business owner, what value are you bringing? And I've I've come across people that have moved jobs and moved careers and moved closed companies and started businesses and done all kinds of things on this kind of realization, where they realize, well, I don't know what value I'm creating, or maybe I'm capable of creating more value, you know, in the world. So it's a hard one for me. It's a difficult one for me to describe.
Okay, well, if
Um,
I maybe rephrase it, I mean, in what way do you choose to conduct your business?
Um, I can look at my business is all about helping people, you know. So I'm always open, if that makes sense. You know, I'm always open to conversation. I don't I don't think I've ever turned anyone away from a conversation that has asked to sit down with me and have a conversation. Obviously, there are services that I provide and programs that I run and everything else that has the monetary value and everything else, but I don't believe I have ever turned anyone away that has needed help, and that was looking for some insight and just wanted to have an hour of my time, you know.
Mm.
And I think that's very, very important, because you know the monetary the monetary value of it is the monetary value of it, and you know all businesses need money to thrive and grow and everything else. But I've had people that I've helped that weren't in a position to pay me, and that I've made subsequently, you know, nice money off them, you know, in after that, where they've come back to me for more business. But that's, you know, that's maybe
Price
one
and
or two.
price and cost.
Yeah, but again, that's probably one or two people out of hundreds that I've just kind of had a conversation with and
Mm.
helped them out, you know. It's
Mm.
never it's never the motivation, is what I would say.
Mm.
So I'm very, how I would conduct my business is, I conduct my business in a very open, I think, and transparent way, where you can, I don't I don't sell to people. Um, and anyone that knows me from a sales background, or that has come to me for advice on sales, would know that I always preach you should never sell anything. You
Mm.
should always solve. So don't ever sell, solve, you know. And that's the bit I'm interested in, actually, is the, what is it, what are we trying to solve here? Show me the problem, and let's get to the bottom of it, and let's find a solution, you
Mm.
know. Um, so open, I think, is the word I would use in how I conduct my business. Openly, I am open.
Well, it's powerful like that. Talk to me about your I don't know if it's maybe too strong a word, but your love of sales. Is it a love?
It is a love, yeah. As in, I love to do it. Um, but again, it's not the sale I love, because I've never sold anything. You know, you'll have other people out there that get a great kick out of actually selling something. You know, I know salespeople that, like, the first thing they'll tell you is the biggest sale they ever made in terms of how much money that was, you know. Whereas I would say the biggest sale I ever made, and I might tell you about a really big problem I fixed for someone, and it might have only been €5, you know. Whereas I've sold things that were worth thousands, but you know, that's secondary. It's, for me, the love is solving the problem. It's matching a problem with a solution that I have access to, and you know, it's it's the reaction you get from the customer from that as well, and from the person that's involved in that experience. And you know, I've been in various sales capacities, in various different places, but the most enjoyable experience is when someone has come in quite distressed over something, and through the sales process they're leaving with a big smile on their face, and you know, they're your best friend type of thing. You know, they're exuding gratitude, for being introduced to whatever it is, you know. So the sale, as I suppose, and again, we're coming back to language and meaning here, and value, and that it's not the transaction of money for a product that excites me and that I love. It's coming back to the helping people solve a problem.
That's interesting. Yeah, I suppose, and from the sales perspective, it's always, as you say, it's not so much it's exchanging time or value or money or energy or whatever it is. That's what a sale is. It's a offer and an acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I like that way of, that actually it's how do you come away as either win-win, that actually you offer a service and they accept, and that's a successful sale in my view. I think.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
You know.
yeah, and that's exactly it. That is exactly it. And I have seen in my time sales closed that I wouldn't have quantified or described as successful sales, because I would have spotted something from an observer's perspective where maybe that customer needed something else, or that was the wrong product. And you just sold it to them for the sake of selling it to them,
Mm,
because, and I've gotten, I've went against, when I was in school and that, I worked in retail as well when I was in school and everything else. And obviously I was with I've done a lot with sales in the event industry as well. I did a lot with sales and that. Um, and I have went against companies and went against on certain things where you were being told this is what we need to move and this is what we need to push,
mm,
and it's the wrong solution for the customer.
mm,
And I've had conversations, you could have sold them that, why didn't you sell them that? You could have convinced them to get that.
mm.
That's not what a sale is. you know so yeah, it's very much about matching the right solution with the problem, you know and creating that mutual benefit.
That makes sense. Yeah, and it's again, it's we're all in different places, But so, just out of curiosity, I mean, where would we find you in your most powerful form, put it like that, or in a flow state? What would that be for you?
One-to-one, very open conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, where we can just very very much get things out, get things out into the real world, get things out of our head and into the real world. you know
Hmm.
and there are certain people that I would call just to have those types of conversations, where I would literally start the call, maybe this is going on and I don't know. It's basically, there's something in my head and I don't know how to get it out. And
Hmm.
by the end of the call, whatever is in my head will exist in the real world in some shape or form. It will have taken on some form,
Hmm.
and we'll have some actions towards it or whatever. So definitely, I think I'm at my most powerful in open conversation, as you said as well. Idea generation and all of that kind of stuff, coming up with ideas. And yeah, that's where I'm at my in a one-to-one conversation. That's where you get the best out of me. Yeah.
That's great. I just out of curiosity, then, I mean, and with your sort of imagination and things like that, and obviously your process background, how far forward do you plan forward? I mean, do you set goals for yourself and bucket lists and things like that, or?
I do plan forward. Yeah, I do. Um, yeah, I do plan forward. You know, I know where I want to be and I know when I want to be there, kind of thing. There's a couple of things we're working on now. Just before coming on this call, which I had couple of calls around that with people that are involved. We're looking at how that's exactly what we're looking at, actually, is the when, putting the timeline on it, and when, and then we'll get into we know what we want to achieve. A lot of the pieces are in place now. We just need to put the timeline on it and go and start taking the actions within that timeline. So yeah, it's not something, I don't need them. I'm not someone that needs a deadline to work towards, because if I have that fire in the belly, I will do it in the shortest space of time I know how. And if someone shows me a way to do it even quicker, I'll do that. So it's not something I need, but
Hmm.
they are certainly something I use. Yeah.
And in terms of then inspiration or ideas, I mean, do you have a method, or do you have certain rituals that you do, and for your daily life and how you sort of solve problems, etc.?
Um, my to be my rituals would be in the opposite. Not because that's very much, that question is very much, how do I suppose, switch on and get into that creative flow. I think is kind of the question you're asking there. And what rituals do I use to switch those on? Where it's actually more, I find myself more needing rituals to turn them off. So yeah, I'd have a couple. I might watch like literally at nighttime, where sometimes the head is going so fast and I'm so in it that I can't switch off and go to sleep. So I have little rituals. My whole body knows that if Netflix comes on at a certain time at night, that I'm to be asleep within 30 minutes. So my body, if Netflix goes on at a certain time, my body will be kind of asleep within 30 minutes. So I have these little cues, and it's, again, they're just little tools of that I use, because that's all a ritual is. It's a tool to instruct your body to do something.
Mm.
That's all it really is. So uh, it's I can do them. I can do that quite quickly in most cases, where I can command. I don't know if you're familiar with like hyper focus and all that kind of stuff.
No, not
But
really.
yeah, it's where you can. The weirdest thing I ever did with it was actually the first time I discovered it. It was something. It's basically commanding your body to do things. Right. That's essentially what it is. Right. And the first time I used it successfully was I was sitting at the drums, and there was one particular, we call it a flick. There was one little thing that I could always do with my left hand, actually, which is my weaker hand. Okay. But I could never do it with my right hand. Okay. So I could do it with my left hand, could never do it with my right hand. And that was a block for me all the time. And I used this hyper focus technique, and it was basically commanding my body to, you see the message you send down this arm, send it down this arm. And within like a minute or 2 minutes, my right arm was able to do it. The information was already there in the body. You see, I just needed to, and it wasn't tight, because obviously your right arm isn't a perfect copy of your left, and that, so it wasn't a, there was, but within a couple of minutes I had it down to a real fine. I just needed to transfer that information over to this side of the body. I remember that was the first time I'd ever used it. So I can do things like that, where if I find myself in a certain mood, or feeling stiff, or feeling whatever, I can you know I can command my body quite effectively. But I do find sometimes when the imagination comes in and things start running away, I need it. Sometimes I need other things to come in and give the body those commands, and give the body its cue that, like, Netflix is on, it's time to go to sleep now. So
It's great because I've obviously trained my body when Netflix comes on. That's me awake till 2 o'clock in the morning.
right, okay.
it's, it's amazing. As you say, it's amazing the things you train yourself to do.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what's your piece de resistance on drums and piano? Do you have a certain go-to tune or something that's just
Well,
gets you going?
on the piano, I can't actually play it anymore. But it was Root Beer Rag, from, well, I'm going to have to look that up. Who wrote that? Billy Joel. That's who wrote
Okay.
it. Yeah. Root Beer Rag. That was my greatest accomplishment on the piano. On the drums, I don't really know. Yeah, I don't really know on the drums what would be my party piece, if you like, on the drums. With the drums, I'm very much, I'll just sit in, and I can just play along with anything. I can do something to everything, kind of thing. I can put, mightn't be exactly what the guy that wrote the piece of music was doing, but I'll be able to play along. Um,
What's your style? I mean, I don't know what style of drummers you get. I mean, I'm sort of thinking of what do you call Animal out of, is it Sesame Street or something? He's sort of
yeah.
going bananas.
I think one of my biggest influencers would have been, what's his name, Chad Smith from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Really liked his style of drumming, and I think his name was Mike Portnoy from everything's gone out of my head today, Pete. The name of the band has gone out of my head. Dream Theater. That was it. The
Okay.
drummer from Dream Theater, and the drummer from the Chili's, probably my two biggest influences on the drums. Yeah. So
Mm,
that would be like rock, and kind of heavier metal type rock. Not heavy metal, but heavier rock.
mm. No, it's great. I mean, and the fact that I was just curious as well that you use them for different things. In
Mm.
terms of what it does for you. What goes forward. So tell me this. I mean, what advice to your younger self? What would you be saying?
Advice to my younger self: know the price. know the price before you start, as much as possible. You won't always get it, but you won't always get it spot on. But as much as you can, make sure you've done, as much, the price as much as you can before you embark on a goal.
And how would you explain to someone how to measure that price?
How to measure that price? It's kind of like how long is a piece of string. It completely depends on what it is. But look for look at things like what skills are required for it. How many of them do you have? How many of them do you need? How much time are you going to have to invest to develop those skills, if you do need to develop those skills? Again, if it's something to do with business or that, it's what investment is required. The obvious stuff, is there equipment and all this kind of stuff, that kind of obvious stuff that you should be doing anyways. But time, I think, is time and skill is the big one. Knowing the time that you need to put in, and knowing the skill. And look at other people that have done it. As I said, anything can be done. Anything that has been done can be done by virtue of the fact it has been done. So go find the people who have done it. Actually, to be honest, that would probably be the biggest advice I would give my younger self. Surround yourself with people that have done what you're trying to do, or similar things to what you're trying to do, because they know how to do it. They know the price. They know what they paid to do it. So that's your benchmark. Don't surround yourself with people that haven't done what you're trying to do, because they cannot serve you in that regard. It's not that they can't serve you, but they can't serve you with regard to what it is you're trying to achieve if they haven't achieved it themselves.
That makes sense. Just going forward. Just a curious one. Would you say you like yourself, or you love yourself?
I love myself, yeah, I do. There was a time I didn't, but I do now. Yeah.
Are you do you monitor your mood and things like that, or you good at self-checking yourself, or do you?
When you say monitor,
I suppose, I mean, do you have an awareness of yourself in terms of energy levels, mood levels,
I do,
where you're at?
yeah, I do, yeah, I do, and I know, I certainly do, yeah, and I know when certain things need to be checked. I've this sounds a little strange. I've a very good dialogue with my body now, and that's not that I talk to myself. I do actually talk to myself. One of my greatest creative flows is walking around and vocalizing things, and actually talking it out loud. But I have a very good dialogue with my body, in the sense that my body will communicate to me when something needs to be looked at. So yeah,
And describe that for me. Sorry, well, it's different.
yeah, it's hard to describe. It's an experience, really. So I suppose I've always had that. I've had, I was born with heart murmurs and that. So from that regard, in terms of that communication with my heart, and that in terms of exercise and sports and stuff like that, um, I I would have always had that awareness of what was going on around here, with regard to, if I need, if I was playing, I used to play basketball when I was younger, and I did a bit of parkour when I was in college and that. And if I needed to like tap out for a minute, I I'd know what I'd know what was going on here. I'd know what that meant. So it's stimulus. It's how I hold myself as well. How I find myself holding myself. Like, when I wake up in the morning, do I wake up in the morning like this, up, or do I wake up in the morning kind of like this, So how I find my body, my actual body language, itself, that's a big indicator to me, as into what's going on. And do I need to adjust my mood here now, or am I getting a bit sad, or am I a bit down today, or do I need something to lift me up, or what's going on? So it's the little things that our body does. It's all those little things that our body does be at, that tells me how I need to regulate my mood or that.
Well, that's excellent. So tell me, power of the individual. Explain to me what, who this is really for, and the benefit, and what it's all about.
This is for people. It's for people that want to take control of their own world. Okay. So it's for people, and as I say, I think now it's very, very relevant in terms of what's going on, in the world. People that want to, people that are feeling lost right now, particularly if they're in business and they're struggling to see an opportunity. Because one thing I guarantee you guys, in what's going on right now, there are unbelievable opportunities in what is happening right now for business. And don't get me wrong, I think if you gave anyone a time machine and said, go back in time and here's the switch for COVID-19, turn it on or off, I think we'd all leave it off. But we are where we are, and we're in the reality we're in, and we've got to do what's what we got to do. So there is big opportunities out there for business. So anyone that's struggling with that, I'd love to engage with those individuals. But people who are looking to take control of their lives, that want to be able to get rid of the things in their life that they're not happy with, and want to learn how to create a world that is them, that completely comes from them and is not influenced by things outside of themselves, unless they want to be influenced by them. So that's who it's for, really. Yeah.
That's powerful. So tell me, how do we reach out? How do we get a hold of you?
Well, you can get me at info@poweroftheindividual, or you can go onto my Facebook page, facebook.com/poweroftheindividual, and you can message me there. I'm on LinkedIn just as Eamonn Walsh. You can grab me on LinkedIn, and yeah, that's Facebook, LinkedIn, or the email is probably the best way to get a hold of me. Yeah.
That's superb. So just to close out then, fire in the belly, can you summarize it in one word or a few words?
Decision.
Cool.
Decisiveness. That's, yeah, that is it. You get when the decision is easy, that's when you've got fire in the belly. When everyone else would call it crazy, and you're seeing this is an easy decision, that's when you've got fire in the belly.
Said with decisiveness. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect. Eamonn, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, and really looking forward to seeing what comes up and see what's going on. So yeah, thank you for coming.
Brilliant.
On today.
Thanks very much, Pete.
Lovely. Talk to you soon.
Take care.